Hi and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Flo and today is an exciting video because I am officially starting my fantasy journey. I typically only read contemporary romance fiction. However, I have had acatar sat on my TBR for a year and a half, I think, and so now I'm gonna start reading it. So I thought I would turn this into a bit of a fantasy reading vlog. So I'm going to start with acatar, and then I also have the second book. Is it called A Court of... I can't remember. But I'm also maybe going to include Fourth Wing in this reading vlog as well. So I will be reading the first two books in the acatar series and Fourth Wing, and I'll let you know my thoughts as I go through it. I'm a bit scared of fantasy, and I think it's because when I read romance I find it really easy to follow and I listen to a lot on audiobook and I pivot between the two. But my friend Jess, who actually bought me this book, she said to get the best experience with acatar you need to like sit and read it properly on paperback. So I'm going to do that, particularly as we're now in autumn, so I feel like it's a really great time of year to start reading fantasy. So I'm going to get some candles going and I'll let you know my thoughts as I start this book, and then hopefully as I read the other two as well. Okay, so here is my first update on acatar. So this is my first ever fantasy book that I've read, and I know I've mentioned that before, but the reason I'm caveating that is because I have no idea what's going on, and I think that it's because I've never read a fantasy book before. I have been mixing. I know I said I wouldn't get the audiobook, but to help me get into the world a bit more, I have been mixing between reading the paperback and listening to it. I picked up this book a year ago, I think, read 50 pages and then wanted to read something else. So I already can remember what happened in the first 50 pages, but I listened to the audiobook to get back into it and to remind myself. And then I only listen to the audiobook when I'm on a dog walk because then I can fully understand what's happening. Whereas I normally listen to audiobooks when I'm like working or a little bit around the house as I'm doing chores. So I don't think I'll do that because I don't want to be slightly distracted. But I'm driving from my parents' house back to London tomorrow, so I'll get like 2 hours of listening time in, which I think will be good because I can fully concentrate on it. I get what's going on, but I keep like forgetting which characters are who, and I don't know if I like people or not. I don't know who's a bad character and who's a good character. I just know that I do like the main character. But don't ask me who does what and who is who, because other than her, I have no idea. And I kind of vaguely follow the plot, like she's been captured because she killed a fairy, and now she's in like her captor's house, but like he's letting her live like a good life and a nice life. But then like other mystical creatures are popping up and like causing all sorts of drama, but that is literally all I can say about it. So I'm hoping tonight I'll be able to read a little bit more, and then I'm hoping that tomorrow on the drive it will really help me get into the book. Stay tuned. Okay, so to provide an update, I have just driven back from my parents' house back to London, and it was about a 3-hour drive. Traffic was really bad. So I listened to acatar, and I listened to a big chunk because I speed up the sound of the audiobook. Before I got in the car, I wasn't convinced by this series at all. I didn't understand the hype. I didn't even know what was going on. And I did post a TikTok, and people said that because of the world building, the first time you read it, you kind of don't have a clue. And it's only when you like reread it or like continue with the series that you have any sense of any idea what's going on. And people were like, just stick to it until you get to the drama. And I didn't know what they meant, but I've got to the drama on the drive and it's gripped me. I would say that like the imagery is really good. Like the pictures that she creates in my head, like the author, I find it hard to picture like the fantasy world because obviously it's nothing like anything I know. I would say some scenes are quite gruesome and I would be like cringing as I was listening, but I think I've got like an hour left of the audiobook, so hopefully I'm gonna get the paperback out now and I'm gonna read in bed for a bit and hopefully I finish it tonight. I think it depends how far I actually am in terms of page numbers, but hopefully not too far from the end and I can finish it tonight. Then I can start the second one and really get into the world, because I hear that the second book is so much better than the first, because like the world has been built and you know what's happening and all the drama is kicking off. I think that there's a cliffhanger at the end of this book. But do you know what's funny is that despite all of the hype with acatar, I actually have not had any idea like what the book is actually about. Like it's not been spoilt for me on TikTok or social media. I've kind of gone into this pretty blind, and I think maybe it's sort of meeting my expectations, but I literally have no idea what I'm going to rate this book at all. I don't even know if maybe I won't rate this book and I'll wait till I finish the series, because it just feels like it's only getting started. So it's like, how can you rate something before you've got to the end of it? So I don't know, to be decided. I might decide to rate it. I might get to the end and go, this is amazing. But right now I have no idea. The only word I could use to describe how I feel about this book is gripped. I'm invested. I want to see what happens. But other than that, I can't even compare it to like how I rate books, because I normally rate contemporary romance. So it's just the different scale. I have no idea, but this is my first ever fantasy read. So hopefully, now that I'm adapting, it will just get better for me. So I have one chapter left of acatar and I'm gonna get in bed and read it now. I feel hooked, so maybe I'll end up going straight on to the next one. So ignore the state of me. I've just woken up, but I wanted to give you last night's thoughts on acatar. So I finished the first one last night. I had the last chapter to read and I was hooked enough that I moved on to the second one. But now that I've like slept on it, I have like a few thoughts and feelings. I wasn't sure if I was gonna rate it, but I think if I had to rate it right now, and what I did put on my Goodreads was, at the moment, I put it as 3-star. And I think it's because I'm partway through the story, like I'm not there yet, and I've definitely not got into it, but I'm hooked enough to carry on. I'm not obsessed with it. I know some people have read the first one and they feel obsessed immediately, but I'm not there yet. I hear really good things about the second book, so I'm hoping that that really gets me like fully absorbed into the world, and maybe I'm just transitioning into understanding fantasy. But what I would say about the first book is I didn't feel connected to any of the main characters other than the female main character. Is her name Feyre? Is that how I say it? I never know with fantasy names. I was most obsessed with her. Hamlin, I didn't feel connected to at all. It's weird, I don't feel their love. He doesn't really feel like much of a character. I haven't felt connected to him. He doesn't feel warm. And I know without spoiling it, at the end of the book was when my thoughts of I don't feel that connected to him started to creep in. There's a few hints throughout the first book that lead me to think that I should be questioning their love story. Who knows? We shall see, but I don't feel like I'm connected to him. And I don't know if that's normal, if that's like what the way other people felt. But what I have heard is that people say your first assumptions on characters in this book like vastly change throughout. So that will be interesting. So I'm gonna spend half an hour this morning reading this book before taking Lola out. Time for a Court of Mist and Fury reading update. So I am just over halfway and I have been doing a mix of reading the paperback and listening to the audiobook, because I'm enjoying it more than acatar, but I'm still not fully focusing on the plot, and there are areas where like I'll forget what happens, or I'm not fully following it, or something doesn't make sense. And so I'll listen to the audiobook and I might go over the bits that I've read in paperback, or vice versa. Or actually, when I've been on the tube, I've been listening to it whilst following along in written form. So that's helping me mix between, and I think it would have taken me so much longer to read and get this far in the space of, I think it's been 4 days, had I not been doing that. I'm not loving it, like I said. I'm not fully hooked yet, and a lot of people say that this is their favourite one. So I'm hoping, like, I am loving the plot a lot more, and I guess I understand the world a lot more, but I'm not like, I'm not gripped, and I'm not turning the page frantically hoping to find out what happens next. I'm just standardly enjoying it, but which is really sad because I was actually hoping I would be like fully obsessed with this world. Like, I have friends that have had like tattoos from the acatar world, so I was desperate to feel the same amount of obsessiveness as I did with like the Boys of Tommen series, but so far not yet. But maybe there's so many more of these books to go, and still a fair bit of this book, that there is still hope for me. And I'm not slating it. I don't think that it's a bad book. I think it's more the fact that I'm not fully used to fantasy and I'm not fully gripped in it yet. And a lot of people start their fantasy journey by reading acatar, so maybe this will be a bit hit and miss for me. But then I've got Fourth Wing on my TBR, and I want to get Powerless by Lauren Roberts as well, and I've heard great things about both of those. So maybe this is just the start of my fantasy journey, and it's getting me out of the romance mindset and into different worlds. But I am glad I've read it. People I've spoken to about acatar were like, just stick with it, so I will keep going. So I have just finished A Court of Mist and Fury. I've been dipping in and out of the audiobook and paperback, so I finished this within like a few days. I'm trying to collect my thoughts here because it was definitely so much better than acatar. I rated this book 4 stars, but everybody's like, wait till the end of the book, wait till the end of the book because it will grip you. And my goodness, were they right? But I still wasn't convinced by like the first half of this book. I feel like it was quite long, and I guess with fantasy a lot of the books are longer. That is just the nature of it, because you've got to world build and then develop the characters to help you really get into the series. And I know that that's been the case for this one. I felt confused by the first part of this book, still much like acatar, and then towards the end, the romance in this book is really what's keeping me engaged and really enjoying the series. I'm really excited for the next book. I was gonna just do this book, acatar, and Fourth Wing in this video, but now maybe I'll just do the whole series because I am getting really gripped. And I'm thinking, do I go to the next one of this book before starting Fourth Wing? Because I feel like maybe I do the whole of the acatar series, then have a break with some kind of romance book, and then start Fourth Wing. I don't know what to do, so you'll find out in the next part of this video. Good morning, it is Sunday and I have officially started Fourth Wing. I know that when I got to the end of A Court of Mist and Fury, I was like, I'm gonna go to the next one, like I'm going book shopping today, I'm gonna buy it, and I'm just gonna continue in the acatar world because I think it's a bit, I've heard not to mix. I know a lot of people, when they're in a series or like a fantasy world, they then have a mini break with like a completely different genre before they start another book. But I just saw this beautiful paperback sat on my shelves and I couldn't get A Court of Wings and Ruin in any like book deal when I went book shopping yesterday. So then I just ordered it online because I knew I could get it cheaper on Amazon. And I think the Works have stopped stocking acatar. I went to the Works to hopefully get it. So because they didn't have it, I was like, well, I'll just see if I can get it online instead. So anyway, that's arriving today. And so because I'm waiting for it, I just saw this on my side and I was like, I need to get to it. I'm just gonna start reading it. And I do not regret it one bit. I'm finding this world so much easier to get into compared to acatar, but I know that, well, actually, this is a series as well. I was going to say maybe like the first couple of books need to be a bit more world building-y because there's tons of books in the acatar series, but there are more in this one to come as well. I think maybe the concepts are really different and also their writing styles are really different. I'm obsessed with Rebecca's romance books. I listened to on audiobook The Last Letter recently, and that was a 5-star read for me. So I think I just really like her writing style. And also I guess this world, it's kind of cool because they're all at, I guess it would be university age, so they're all studying or whatever. She's studying to become a rider, and so I think that concept was easier, whereas I think acatar, I don't know why, I just found it harder to think of the world or get into it as quickly. This seems a bit simpler in the nicest way, because I'm loving the fact that it's kind of simple, because I haven't really read much fantasy in the past. And if you don't know the premise of this book, I will try and summarize it, but I'll probably stutter and stumble, because describing any book that I'm reading or have read is actually the biggest challenge for me, because I literally, after a second of reading it, I forget what the book was about. So fantasy would be even harder. But essentially, hi. I don't know if you can see my dog, but she's just joined us. So as I was saying, I think there are 4 different professions you can become or train to be, but I can only remember 3. So there could just be 3. I don't know, like I said, my memory. So you could become a scribe, a rider, so a dragon rider, or a healer. Violet, who's the main character, is training to become a rider. She always wanted to be a scribe because that's what her dad was, but her dad passed away and her mum was a rider, and her 2 elder siblings were also riders, and so she's kind of following in that like family expectation. Her mum is like, you are being a rider, but only I think a quarter of people, or it could even be less, is it like 15% of people survive the 3 years of training and make it to become a rider. And it's all about whether you like bond with a dragon and things like that. And I know that is it like enemies to lovers, because I know that the male person that she ends up falling in love with, I think, is actually not currently her enemy. Like, I've just met him and they're enemies. So I'm really gripped by this story, and it's really nice to read. The one thing I will say is some of the chapters are a bit long, and because this is the airport edition of the book, it's literally just like a paperback version of the formatting of the hardback. But I love that the pages are big. The text is kind of big, but there's a lot of text on each page, and so it's hard to like feel like you're accomplishing a lot. Like, I've only read 44 pages. I'm getting to chapter 4 now, and I know I'm not supposed to look at the last page, that's what I've heard, so I think it's just under 500 pages, so I think it might take me a little bit to get through, and I'm not going to get the audiobook of it because I've got other books that I want to get to on audiobook, so I'm just going to read this in paperback, and hopefully I can get through it in a week and it won't take me too long, providing work isn't too busy. So I will update you as I go through the book and give you some more of my reactions. So I was supposed to be in bed an hour ago, and I have work tomorrow, but I cannot contain my thoughts on this book. I'm on page 176 and I'm just getting to like the part where the dragons are introduced, so I'm only going to say that without saying too much. But is it weird to describe the scenes as like beautiful? Like, I don't know, I just feel so gripped. I keep saying one more chapter and then it gets to like a cliffhanger and then I can't put it down. And there hasn't even been any romance in the book yet. Like, people do say that it's a bit of a slow burn, and I'm like a romance person through and through, but I don't even care about that. I'm just so hooked on getting to know the dragons. I just love the main character so much. I'm really rooting for her. I feel so invested in such a fantasy world, and I never thought I would be like that, because I like romance, or I like books where I can see myself as the main character, and obviously you can't see that in like a fantasy world. It's completely different. I just don't even have the words to describe how much I'm loving this book, and I hope it continues, and I hope it just keeps getting better and better. I'm a stickler for my bedtime and my bedtime routine and making sure I get 8 hours of sleep before work. I've never had this where I'm like, oh, screw it and just keep reading. It's so good. If you've not read this book, you need to, and I can't believe I'm recommending it and I'm not even like halfway through yet, but oh, I love this book so much. So, reading update. As you know, I'm still reading the paperback of Fourth Wing, but I really want to continue the acatar series, and so I have also started reading, which you might think is a bit rogue of me, but I have started A Court of Wings and Ruin, but I'm listening to the audiobook, and that's because, if you can't tell from the background behind me, I am at my parents' house, and so I drove from London for 2.5 hours back, and I thought that's perfect time to sort of get into the audiobook, and I've been listening to it as well when I've been walking my dog. But I wish I could say that I was loving it. Like I'm going back to the same feeling of I'm really not getting into the series, and I feel as if, I don't know if I'm really like making myself sound really dumb. I feel like it's a bit too overcomplicated for me, but I think it's the writing style of it. I don't know, I'm disappointed again. I felt like I had a glimmer of hope at the end of the second book and at the end of the first one actually. And now I'm a bit disappointed, and I don't know. I think I'm gonna fly through Fourth Wing this weekend, and then what I will do is do exactly what I did with the second book of this series and go back to pivoting between audiobook and paperback as a way to get through it. But it makes me feel sad that I'm viewing acatar, like the series, as something I need to get through as opposed to something that I'm enjoying. So I'm disappointed that the hype has not lived up for me, but I know that it's all personal preference, and I can see why other people love this book, and I wish I did. Like, I think that's the saddest part, was that I wish I was obsessed with this so much. I just can't do it. I think I wish I'd started with Fourth Wing as like the first book, the first fantasy book that I'd like read, because I think that would have helped ease me in. I think that like ease of that fantasy world is more easy for me to wrap my head around than this one, which is why I think I'm struggling so much, but I'll keep you updated. So it is Sunday and I'm supposed to be having a writing day, but I woke up this morning and I started reading a bit more of Fourth Wing. I'm 100 pages from the end, and the way I feel about this book, it's a Boys of Tommen for me. Like, I'm obsessed with it. Like, I'm giggling, I'm sat here. I love it so much. And it's completely gripped me to the point where I'm supposed to be sat writing now, and all I can think about is, do I want to finish this book? And then I have been listening to more of A Court of Wings and Ruin. I had like a long car journey on Friday, so I got through a bit more, and it's really annoying. Much like the same with any of these books, the first half of it I'm like, I'm not enjoying it, I don't like it, and then in the second half, when it gets juicy and you kind of understand what's happening, you get gripped. So by the end of the book you're like, wait, I did like it, and then you start thinking about it. Now that I've read Fourth Wing and I'm obsessed with Fourth Wing, I keep thinking, do I want to change my ratings for the second book in the acatar series? Because I gave that 4 stars, but I don't think I would read it again. And I feel like I would give it 3, and I feel like this is a 3-star at the moment. But I've got 6 hours of the audiobook left, so I'm over halfway, but I've still got a while to go, so I will report back. I've just come home from work, it's Monday, and I didn't have time to finish all of Fourth Wing yesterday before needing to go to bed. I pushed it as late as I possibly could. So I woke up early this morning, set my alarm early to get up and read, and I've got like the last chapter left. I wanted to have the last chapter as I got into bed tonight, so I'm gonna finish it now, and I'm just so sad that it's ending because I've absolutely loved it. Like, this is up there with Boys of Tommen, like new favourite, like 100% worth the hype. I just can't wait for the sequel as well. I'm just so sad it's ending. I have kept the last chapter just to keep it on my still reading. I'm sad that it's ending. It's like emotionally, like I've been thinking about it all day. I've not been able to focus on anything whilst I've been at work, because I've been thinking about this book. Oh, and I did also finish A Court of Wings and Ruin. Is that the title? The third book? How have I forgotten it? I gave it 3 stars. I got into it near the end, but I'm just still not convinced by this series. I'm gonna keep going. provide a mini update. I have finished A Court of Frost and Starlight, which is book 3.5 in the acatar series. Much to the same as the others minus the second book, I gave it 3 stars. I understood it a lot more, and people on Goodreads said that they felt as if it was kind of like a Christmas novella, like a bonus book, which is exactly how it felt, and maybe that was why I could kind of understand it a little bit more and follow it, because there wasn't a lot of in-depth plot. But I'm now going to go on to the audiobook of the final book in the series, which is A Court of Silver Flames. A lot of people have said to me that maybe I'm not enjoying it as much because I'm listening to the audiobooks, but for me, the books are too thick to just read in paperback. I would be doing this vlog forever. Overall, I'm not fully taken by the series, and I don't actually know if reading it in paperback would change that opinion. Maybe I'll re-listen to all of them at some point and see if I can get into it a bit more, but I also maybe think that I should have picked more simple fantasy books to start with. That's probably my one takeaway. So maybe I will come back to acatar at some point, but we'll see. I will carry on with the audiobooks and let you know when I get to the end of the series. Okay, so I have finished the acatar series. I just finished listening to A Court of Silver Flames, and much like the other books, gave it 3 out of 5 stars, wasn't fully into it or fully obsessed with it, disappointingly so, but I reckon it's because I maybe should have started with other fantasy books before going into this one. And it wasn't necessarily that I got distracted listening to the audiobook, because I think it was because I didn't enjoy it, whereas I don't think it was because the plot was too difficult for me. I actually realised after listening to all of the books, I just don't think that I could picture the world in my head, and I think that the author's descriptions and maybe the just general world that she built, I couldn't really connect with or imagine in my head, whereas like Fourth Wing, I could picture that so easily. So I don't really know why, I just really didn't connect with the acatar series, the world or the characters. I have to say I did like Nesta's character. Oh, do you want to come down? But the audiobook actress, I don't know, some of the voices that she would do, I didn't listen to the dramatic one, I just listened to the normal one, and I sometimes got a bit cringed out. But there were parts of each book that I liked and didn't like. I don't think I was like wrapped up in any of the drama or got like caught up with. Even the romantic connections were a bit like I wasn't that bothered by. But maybe I should go back, I say this, maybe I should go back and like reread it when I've got into the fantasy journey a little bit more than just these books that I've read. There are so many other fantasies that I do want to read, and I'm really glad, at least, if anything, I used to be such a romance reader, so at least this has got me to like branch out and experience new genres beyond what I normally would. So if all else fails, acatar got me into my fantasy era. And I also, funnily enough, usually if I do like a reading vlog or a wrap up or something, I'll sort of talk about the premise of each book, but I actually really didn't know what was happening in the acatar series. It hasn't put me off of any of Sarah J Maas's books though. I would really like to maybe read Throne of Glass and start with, is it Assassin's Blade? Because it's not that big, so maybe I'll get that and try reading some more of her books in the future. It hasn't put me off, but I just didn't love it as much as I wanted to. So yeah, that kind of wraps up my fantasy reading vlog. I am now officially a fantasy girly, so I'm excited to read so many more fantasy books. I've already got some on my physical TBR. I'm excited to get to them, and thank you so much for watching, and hopefully see you in the next video.